Good afternoon, everyone. Bill Phillips here at Prince George Daily News. I'm here with our weekly panel, and I'm joined this week by Tracy Calogheros, Chuck Nisbett, and Mackenzie Kerr. Wasn't really on our agenda for today, but since it's all news this morning, William Shatner has blasted off into space. So let's start with that. Just any comments or anybody watch it this morning? Quite the thing for being a 90-year-old headed out into space, and Captain Kirk boldly go where no man has gone before, except a whole bunch of others.
There's a certain irony in Captain Kirk riding a giant phallus into space.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. And I like the memes on Facebook where they have all the other crew members in red uniforms, which, if you're a fan of the original show, know that the guys in red uniforms usually didn't make it through the episode. So
that's exactly it.
And you don't have a name, you're not coming back.
Yeah.
Did he meet any alien females? Because he always met the alien female.
Always.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I watched them live when they were already back and out of the capsule, and it was actually a really interesting social dynamic to watch. And I would encourage anyone who didn't see the sort of raw data to go and find it, because William Shatner was clearly moved by the experience, and he was trying to talk about the significance of what he'd experienced, and said that he felt like everyone on Earth needed to have that experience for the shift in perspective. But Bezos, standing beside him, wasn't listening. He cut him off. He turned to one of the women with the champagne bottles and then started spraying champagne. And you could see that William Shatner was just like taken aback. And then eventually they decided to talk to him. It really drove home for me the Billionaires Club whipping into space to wander around, and they're not seeing the significance of the experience and what that really means for Earth. I mean, Shatner kept talking about looking up into this death void of black and down at Mother Earth. And, granted, he's 90, so I imagine he's thinking about death more than a lot of us are, but the significance was totally over the head of Bezos and the rest of the billionaire club that were there, and the wives.
Yeah, I'm sort of the same thing. Like, I don't begrudge any rich guy wanting to go to space, but do it for the right reasons. And these guys, and Elon Musk is the same. They seem to be doing it just for kicks, right? And get out there and do it to help. Find another power source for Earth, find some new minerals for Earth. Learn about the universe. But that seems to be secondary on these things. Just the Billionaires Club, and they get to pat each other on the back and spray each other with champagne, and away you go. And people starve to death every day on this planet and die of COVID.
It's the same as doing drag races with a Ferrari.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is for them. It's like, oh yeah, I fired up the Lamborghini and we took everybody. It was wicked. Bezos, that's the whole problem we have with Amazon, right? He's there for the fun, not for what he could do that's good.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a maturity thing. Maybe they will get some perspective. I don't know. NASA is moving out of transport. So I think that the commercial space travel is definitely a big piece of the future. NASA is moving more and more into exploration and research, and that's what their focus is. But I don't know. It's a little hard to take.
Well, I guess if
Shatner can measure dick length.
Yeah, if Shatner can do it when he's 90, I guess there's hope for me, because I still got a few years to go before I'm 90. Maybe I can make it up in space, but yeah, I can do that.
That was impressive.
I can do that as well.
Impressive. Wow. I'm not going to show you how hard it is for me to do that.
But anyways, let's bring ourselves back down to earth and closer to home for a few minutes. Last week or the week before, a judge reserved decision on the city's clean streets bylaw, or whatever they call it. Is basically the roust the homeless out bylaw. Do you think anything's going to change here, Mackenzie? We haven't heard from you yet. What's your take on this? It's just a delay, really. I don't know that But sometimes when judges reserve decisions means they're thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, we can hope that's what's happening, but it's good there was a delay. I mean, dismantling the tent city downtown Moccasin Flats isn't really going to do much because it's just going to separate people and they don't really have anywhere else to go. It's good to hear that the Knights Inn will become low income housing, and we're looking for some new places for people to live, so that they're not out on the streets during the winter time. But it's not enough, right? I mean, we need short-term solutions before we dismantle the tent cities and Moccasin Flats, and we need to make sure that they have proximity to the services that they need, housing first approach, and those are longer term thinking, but we also need short-term solutions right now, because you can't be kicking people out when there's no short-term solution of where they're going to go. They're just going to spread out, and that doesn't help anyone. That doesn't do anything. So I'm not really sure what their thought is with that, but I'm hoping that we can come up with some solutions. And I know that there's people working on the ground doing the work. So that's who we need to ask.
Yeah, Chuck, a lot of the people that are living there are saying that it's, other than being housed somewhere, it's better than the alternative of trying to find a warm duck on the street somewhere to hover over, because they have garbage collection there, various service people around there, they know where they are. So should we perhaps just failing a good solution, just leave them there, because it's there's worse alternatives. You push people out, where are they going to go, right?
Well, I think that's exactly it. I mean, there's worse alternatives. There are definitely worse alternatives. And I don't see where they're going to go, but back out into everybody's doorways and alleyways throughout downtown if you dismantle the whole thing. I don't know how far we're off on the housing on First. I think it's supposed to be done by spring or something.
Yeah, March, I heard.
Yeah, so it's going to be a while. So let's get that area prepped as best we can for winter. Winter's coming. Let everybody get set up the best they can, and keeping them in one place allows them a chance to get ready, instead of trying to bounce them around every morning when the bylaw services comes along, right? So I think it's the best plan for right now, is to leave them where they are. I know a lot of people downtown are upset that it's on the edge of downtown, and you've got homeless people who head out from there every day looking for whatever they can to provide for themselves throughout the day. And they're saying, oh yeah, we've got homeless people walking into my business or around my business. But seriously, if you dismantle that, you're just going to have everybody walking the streets downtown anyhow, trying to find a place where they're going to be able to stay warm for the night. So let's just leave it be and let them cope the best they can for this winter, and see if we can provide something better in the future.
Yeah, Tracy, the Night Inn is being leased by the province to help out, and I can't remember how many rooms they have here. And ironically, that was announced after the judge started his deliberations or whatever, so it couldn't be taken into his deliberations, I suppose, that the Night Inn is available. Do you think that's going to help, or I'm not sure how soon that will be available?
Yeah, I'm sure the fire in the suite there didn't help on Sunday.
No.
I'm okay with the reserve judgment. They can take months to come back with a written reasons for judgment. So who knows when we'll get an answer there. I don't think we can just leave it as is and let them try and cope for the winter. The folks that are living at Moccasin Flats, they're not going to survive a winter in the temperatures that we get in tents and tarp walls. We have a social responsibility. We've just had the first National Truth and Reconciliation Day to talk about the children that never made it home from residential schools. Well, there's a significant portion of the folks that are unhomed that are residential school survivors. So the whole country just shut down for a day to think about what was done to these children that never came home. Now we're looking to push the people who did come home out into the fringes of society. You know, you don't get to wear an orange shirt and have all your staff in an orange shirt in your downtown business and then be mad because an Indigenous person has nowhere to go and comes in to try and use your bathroom. You know, that reconciliation is a far bigger and more complex topic than just wearing an orange shirt once a year and trying to pretend that that homeless person isn't really there so you can just step around them. You know, we have a moral obligation to care for people, whether they are Indigenous or not Indigenous, and the people that are currently unhoused and living in moccasin flats are not just some problem. These are human beings. These are people that have their own lived experiences, their own stories, their own multi-generational trauma, perhaps. And to think that we can just leave them sit there and try and get through one of our winters. Heck, I was in, I don't know how many layers standing on the train platform all weekend in the sun, and I was still cold. I cannot imagine trying to live in that space or trying to raise a kid in that space. So yeah, we've got some housing coming in March. We've got the Nights In hopefully available in the closer short term. But I'm really sick to death of listening to people complain about the challenges being faced by our entire community with regard to the unhoused people in the downtown area while they stand there in an orange shirt. To me, that's just such a complete hypocrisy and disconnect.
And, well, you talk about truth and reconciliation, but and the camp at the end of Fifth has been dubbed Moccasin Flats. Isn't that perhaps in our more woke world an inappropriate name, and not assuming that, and we shouldn't assume that everyone down there is Indigenous.
We don't assume that everyone down there is Indigenous, but the people living in that space are the ones that named it.
Oh, I know. I realize that that's the nickname they're giving it themselves, but it's kind of, it's being perpetuated everywhere. Like we talk about it here, call it Moccasin Flats, and should we? Because that creates the image that everyone down there is Indigenous.
Fair enough.
You know, in my view, anyways.
But you're gonna have to go with the common name, right? I mean, that's what happens. No matter where you are. I mean, it's not the people from Manhattan that called the ghetto of New York the ghetto. It was the people in the ghetto that called it the ghetto. That's what happens. And that's the way it became. So the name comes from the people, and you just got to take it and go with it, I think. I mean,
I think too, it's
there are
about
far more important things than the name. You know, the most important thing is making sure there's enough shelter there for people.
Yeah, that's, and I'm always, when they talk about names like this, it's always one of my, I always chuckle, because when I was in Williams Lake, there was from the Williams Lake Indian Band, they created an all Indigenous fire rap attack crew. You know, these are the guys that they get dropped off helicopters when a fire starts in the bush, and they were all native, and they called themselves the Fire Engines.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so should
I think that's a great name.
Yeah, it's witty, it's clever, and it tells the story, right?
Yep.
So should we be upset about that because that's the name they give themselves? That was a long time ago, though. I don't know if they'd get away with that now, but it's just interesting how we deal with names, and words matter, and that kind of thing. Mackenzie, your thoughts on?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's a whole philosophy in feminism around reclamation and taking back the words, particularly about female genitalia, that people use as a weapon. And you look at hip hop culture, and there are significant fortunes made on songs featuring the N-word. You know, language is important. You're right, Bill, but I also think that language can be used as a tool for reclamation. It can be used as a tool to create community. And I would suggest, not being a part of the folks living at Moccasin Flats, that they're attempting to build a community, to build something that gives them an identity. Sorry, Mackenzie, I didn't want to jump all over you there, but.
Oh, it's good. No, I agree. And I also think that, you know, Bill, the way that you asked the question too, is that it kind of infers that when we hear that, there's a negative connotation around Indigenous people living on the street. And so I think that if we, can change that, then we can keep the name, right? And we can kind of reclaim it as, that doesn't automatically assume something that is bad, because we're kind of like associating it with, we might be saying there is a higher proportion of Indigenous people that are unhoused, which is an accurate statement if we're looking, at the statistics of who is, unhoused in this city. And I don't think that it's a bad thing that we have unhoused people, but I don't think that we need to kind of make that connection between Moccasin Flats, therefore infers they're Indigenous, therefore that is bad. It's kind of, I think that we should kind of take that judgment out of the statement, which is hard. It's going to take a societal change around how we think about unhoused people and the assumptions that we have as a society, and really breaking that up. I think that's really important that we try and build relationships with the people that are downtown, whether that's we smile at them when we walk by, or we are kind to them. I think that if we can really humanize them, because a lot of the time the problems arise when we dehumanize people. That's a true statement for everything, right? That's when we start to fall down really bad rabbit holes. So we need to humanize them as much as possible, and make visits down, organize some kind of drop off for some supplies, and you can walk down with people who are very familiar with the community down there and get to know people. And I think that can really help change how we view people that are unhoused. And I think that there's a lot of people that need to go out and do that, that we could, we should organize something, because there's a very big stereotype around, how people act and what they do, or, that they're criminals and things like that. Right. And I think we really need to change that as a society and try and connect with our neighbors and our friends that live downtown, right? We really need to humanize them to change, to help fix this problem. And it's going to come from us wanting to build that bridge and try and connect with them.
Mm-hmm. And
going back to Bill's initial question, maybe the reserve judgment's actually an opportunity. Mm-hmm. We have some time here to maybe find some solutions, at least short term, because I don't think long term we're going to have a community of people trying to eke out an existence in tents.
Yeah, I think we really need to make sure that they're, in the meantime, we're not trying to force them
eke out an existence in tents.
Oh,
sorry, that was me
back there. Sorry.
Bill's got echo.
Incredibly important that we're getting as many people as possible inside a building for the winter time. We saw what happened last winter, and it was incredibly cold outside, and we still had people outside. So we need to really find a solution for this winter. And in the meantime, while we're figuring that out, don't try and separate everyone into, you have to sit by yourself instead of sitting in your community. It's not going to do anything.
Mm-hmm. And just for the record, there is a place in the Chilcotin that's called Moccasin Flats. It's a colloquialism, but it's not a new name. But anyways, moving on. So what heading into winter? That's the other part. Like what do we do, and why? I guess why isn't there a drive in the community to try to help some of the people down there in other ways? I think of, I guess we do help out by donating to St. Vincent de Paul and all those kind of things that help feed some of these people. But it's one of the things that always amazes me is that we can fundraise for a lot of things, but we have trouble fundraising for people who are living on the street.
We've actually had some response this summer during that heat dome. We had quite a bit of people trying to help in some way, but I really don't think I think everyone's looking for a focus, someone to focus them, and bring the resources together, because nobody really knows what to do. everyone's afraid to go out and do something by themselves. And I think you really need somebody to go, here, we're setting up, we're trying to make something good happen to help these people. If you come down, we'll help you do what needs to be done. And I think that's what people need. They need direction.
That's the job of our elected officials. They are elected to
yeah.
represent everybody that lives here, and that includes the people that are unhoused. And
Yep,
so
I agree.
we've got lots of levels of elected officials. You can't just push it to the courts. You have to deal with this. And no, it's not popular. And no, it could cost you a vote or two, but that's too bad, because those people are people too, and they are also your constituents. And I'm not just looking municipal here. I'm looking at all levels of government, and I include the Clayton Chief and Council in that. All levels of elected officials need to step up and do something for these constituents who are going to die if they are left in the cold in a tent through this winter. It's very straightforward.
This winter is looking to be an extremely long, cold winter.
No,
And
don't say
I
that.
think someone needs to get it together right now and go, we need to do this. Okay, we've got tents set up. Can we get some wood? Can we get something to insulate? Can we get something to help them build a place where it's going to survive minus 40 degrees temperatures?
Chuck, if we can put up work camps in 2 weeks with ATCO trailers that keep people alive and safe and have social and food and septic, we can do exactly the same thing right now in a short-term solution to save these people's lives.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, there are people here who are willing to go do it, but they just need someone to tell them this is what we need to do and let's go do it. You know, and I think you're right. I mean, we've got elected officials and we've got people in town who it's their job to look after these things. And why are we not hearing anything?
Because it's very easy to push it all onto the backs of the charities and the social services, and then it doesn't become a political risk for someone who is worrying about re-election.
Yeah, well,
That's
I think
why.
I'd be more worried about re-election if I did nothing.
I really think people shouldn't get elected and spend their entire period in office campaigning to be reelected. I think they got elected to do a job. This is the job. This exact thing is the job.
Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, it's the same as when we had people flocking into town from the fires, right?
Yep.
Exactly the same thing. People stood up then and went, yeah, let's get on it. Let's do it. Well, this is another situation where we've got people in trouble. So where's our emergency services people?
That speaks to Mackenzie's point, though. People think that folks on the street are there by choice or by their own poor choices. When folks were evacuated because of fires, no one saw them as responsible for their situation. And I'm arguing that the people who are unhoused are largely not responsible for their situation either and deserve every bit as much empathy and compassion and care, if not more in some cases.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the only way that we can help teach the community to have more empathy towards these people is for them to meet them, because otherwise they're going to maintain these thoughts in their head of, you know, it's their decision to stay there, or, you know, all of the bad stereotypes that we hear. I don't need to repeat them, but, you know, I think the only way that we're going to change that is if we somehow have some type of a meeting, you know, where people can meet each other and hear their stories and hear how they're there and learn, like the public to learn about, you know, residential schools and colonialism and how this has all come to be. It's not just one decision that got them there, right? And they're not choosing to stay there. A lot of the time they how are they supposed to get a job? How are they supposed to get a house? They can't print a resume, you know, that whole step. And, you know, we've seen that list on Facebook probably of people having two discussions of, well, they should just get a job. And then how are they supposed to print a resume? How are they supposed to have an address? How are they supposed to have a phone for them to get a call back? Like all of these things. I think that if there was someone like Chuck was saying to kind of rally around that could organize, that is not a charity that is already pushed to their max, right? They're already doing all the work. It needs to be someone else. These organizations downtown are already doing everything they can every hour of the day to make sure these people stay alive, whether it's the safe injection sites 2 doors down or, you know, St. Vincent de Paul. They're already at their max and they're relying on donations and a decrease in donations because of COVID and everything else. It needs to come from somewhere else. And there's empty buildings downtown, and people bring up security when they say, well, we can't put a bunch of people in an open building. And we really need to, that's a stereotype that they're dangerous, right? I mean, is that true? What do the police calls look like at the tent city? What did they look like across from the courthouse? There was zero. And I've mentioned that before. That was a statistic from a city council meeting, that there was zero police RCMP calls to that tent city when it was across from the courthouse. That, if we can make sure that they're safe and being kept alive, I don't think that we're going to have much of an increase in crime if we're making sure that they're not having to break windows to stay alive. If we're addressing the issue before they have to go commit crimes because they're trying to stay alive, we can prevent those kinds of things from happening. We're looking at it backwards, or a lot of people are looking at it backwards, of just preventative or just reactive, but not preventative, right? So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people already doing the work, trying to help people living down in Moccasin Flats. I know a lot of the people that are doing that, and it's tough because they're already at their max. Like, are we asking those people to be the ones that are now going to organize to find ATCO trailers? I think new people need to come into this circle, work with the people that are already doing the work on the ground and say, what do you need? What is it that I can do right now? I have the money. I just need to make the phone call. That we need people to kind of come in and work with the people already doing the work on the ground. They just have the asks, they have the list of things that they need, but they have no money or resources or the people to pull together the trailers or the get the building rented for free for the winter months, whatever needs to happen. We need those people to kind of come out of the woodwork and not worry about whether it's re-election or what people are going to think, or their relationships and networks with business people that might be mad at them that they're taking this stance, right? I mean, we just need to, I hate to think of what needs to happen before people will take action. How many people need to die in the winter, cold months for people to step forward?
Yeah, in my view, this speaks to the pushing down of responsibility for social services from federal to provincial to municipal to the backs of charities. And that started in the 90s. It starts with this push for smaller government and having everybody in it for themselves. Well, that's not how society works. And if we've learned anything in the last 2 years, it's that's absolutely not the way society is going to function moving forward. And so I shift back to, these are citizens, they are constituents, they are neighbors, they have their own past. And if you are the least bit moved by the orange shirt story, you have to be moved by the plight of the people in Moccasin Flats.
I'm just thinking about it here that Mackenzie had it very right. If you wait and it becomes desperate, then desperate people are going to do desperate things to try and survive, right? Whereas you've got like provincial emergency services plans and things like that were brought into effect for the fires. Why not bring them into effect for the people who are going to be in trouble in the next month, right? When the temperature starts to drop to -20 and you've got to try and survive through that, why not bring that into effect now and get a building or get materials, whatever it takes to help those people now, instead of trying to deal with the problems that come up from not helping them later. So I just feel that there are people and agencies that have the power that are just not being brought into effect right now. And we need them to step up, to get going, not to wait. What are they waiting for? They're waiting for the next fire next summer. Well, that's a long way off. We got a more important fire right now, and it's got no heat. So let's try and get some.
And lots of empty real estate. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not expecting the owner, the businessman who owns the piece of realty, to give it over for free. But I'm sure we can find a way to make it work, whether it's through tax receipts or a combination of government support. And like there's ways to make this work, but it requires somebody who is sitting in a decision-making seat to be able to move all the necessary levers to make it happen. The space is there. It's just a case of making it work. It's political will and bravery.
Yeah, and a little bit of money. I look at like, why not get a food truck down there? Like food trucks, if you're a commercial food truck, you're probably shut down for the winter because nobody likes to stand outside in the cold to get a hot coffee and a donut. But if that's your only thing that you can get today and you're already outside in the cold, you probably will. So why get the city to offset the costs of a food truck to go down there even for an hour or two a day just to give everybody a hot coffee and that kind of thing.
It's exactly a hot meal that day.
A hot meal or whatever, and that kind of thing. But yeah, even better is lots of empty buildings downtown, just get them in there. And
people have to be housed before anything else can change. You're not going to deal with an addiction. You're not going to deal with anything else if you have nowhere to live.
Yeah.
Once you have somewhere to live, then some of those other pieces can start to come into play, but not when you have nowhere to live. And you feel like you're an outlier or an enemy of the community that you are a part of. It's ridiculous. And so I circle back to hot coffees are nice. They can get that at the Sally Ann. Yeah. They need a place to live. They need a bed. They need heat. They need a bathroom. They need a shower. They need somewhere to print a resume. It really upsets me. It's outside of my area of professional work. And so I haven't gotten that far into it. I have other issues that I deal with on a regular basis, but somebody needs to deal with this. And
there's another group that can push this agenda, and I hesitate to point too many fingers because it usually points back at yourself. But the media could play a role in this, and the media could take on a cause. They often do, and not to criticize Neil Godbout too much, but he's had a bee in his bonnet about expenses at City Hall. If he spent some of that time focusing on the homeless problem and directing resources there, then it can become an issue, more of an issue for the community, and media can wield a lot of power at times.
Oh, for sure. The media are some of the only ones that can motivate politicians.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have the media we had. We used to have a vehicle where we could actually send a team in to spend a couple of days and come out with a spread and some stories and show people what it was all about. Yeah. But we don't have it anymore.
And that's my excuse, resources, and all the media is the same, right? The resources to really do some justice. But you can still take up a cause, write editorials all the time, do that kind of stuff.
You can't go in and you don't have a Plus magazine here anymore. And so you can't go in and do a 3-page or 4-page spread, but you can go in and do a story on a family, or a person that everybody sees around town, or, what it takes to get through a day in Moccasin Flats, that can be done still.
You can also probably,
I don't know why it's not.
Guest speakers for the opinion section of experts that are working on the ground, like go give
exactly
all opinion piece spots to people working in these issues, and then it will start filling up all the little spaces in the newspaper. That isn't the front page every day, but every single day in the opinion section, or the where people are allowed to write in their, I forget the name, but
op-ed pages.
Like go reach out to people and say, hey, do you want this spot? I would love for you to have this spot so that it can get some media attention. Even if I don't have the capacity to write the story every day, you can write your own stories and then just email it to me, and I'll put it in there so that at least it gets some coverage. And there's still a lot of people that read the newspaper, even though not my generation, not me, but there's a lot of people that read it all online, but there's people that read
absolutely
in person, right?
Yeah.
It's
diminished, but it still has power. Yeah.
We really need to be talking to the experts. Like, we are obviously not the experts because there's people that are on the ground every single day. And like Tracy was saying, I have my own stuff, but this needs to someone needs to do something, and there is a lot of people doing things, but do they have the time to go write an article every single day? No, they're trying to keep someone alive. Like there needs to be more people involved so that we have enough people for one person to write the editorial every day and one person to make sure that the soup kitchen stays open and all of those kinds of things, right? There's just not enough people that are involved because we're all trying to deal with our own stuff, but we need to, I mean, people are dying. We really need to, I mean, they have previously, and if we continue on this way, they will. So we really need to rethink our priorities of where we spend our time at this point in time.
I suppose in fairness too, we are dealing with multiple existential threats to humanity at the moment, and people are at their capacity to cope. And again, that's why I circle back to it being an elected official's job.
But that said, okay, one thing that helps people get through the pressures of COVID and what's going on is directing the energies elsewhere. If you've got something that you're working on, it allows you to get beyond the day-to-day. I have to make sure I don't spread this thing or receive this thing. It becomes another focus that allows you to move through. And I feel that it would be beneficial to a lot of people to have something else to focus on. And, just that mental clarity of trying to work through a problem is important. So, and
it's community too, right? It's being a part of something that is bigger than yourself and having a good cause of something that you can, you shouldn't be doing this to feel good about yourself, but you will also feel part of a community and it will feel good helping people, right? And if that's needing because you're having a really hard time coping with COVID and not being able to see a lot of people, follow the Facebook page and show up to one of the outdoor protests. They're safe, wear your mask outside, ask how you can help, attend some of the days where they go and drop off goods in Moccasin Flats, and ask if you can, be a part of the planning committees for when they present at city council. There's a lot of things. So if people are wondering what the Facebook page is called, where all these people are organizing, it's called Together We Stand. And, there's unhoused people that are on Facebook that are part of that group. So when things are happening down there, they can post about it, and, the people that are supporting them are part of that page. So obviously it's a very safe space, and be cognizant of that and be very respectful, but that's where the organizing happens, all the event pages when they hold protests and things like that. So I think that's kind of the entry point for people right now that are watching, that are wanting to get involved. That's where I suggest they go.
Yeah, and it can be tough, right? Because we often get wrapped up in our own lives and don't focus on these things, like Tracy mentioned existential threat. Well, exactly, we have climate change, but how much of each of us every day in our daily lives think about what we can do on climate change, because we, one, don't know what to do, and two, got to get the kids to hockey, and three, got to see grandma and grandpa, and I got to do this, I got to do that, and it's hard to refocus, and I guess that's part of the problem too, is getting people to refocus on issues like this. And we tend to, our own lives now seem to be so busy all the time, it's hard to find the time to do that. So yeah, and I guess that's one of the big questions too. How do you get people to refocus on that? Especially now, everybody's tired with COVID. Everybody's, federal election, everybody's just exhausted.
I think that the fires were a really good example of when it's a crisis, people can
mobilize,
refocus and mobilize. And I think that we need to frame it as a crisis every time we talk about it, because it is. And that will help getting people on board and getting people to say, hey, I should really step up and help out. And a lot of people can't, because they're also living paycheck to paycheck, although they have a roof over their heads, right? And I mean, it's not those people that we're calling on that they should drop everything, and right, it's we know who we're calling on, the people that have the time and the privileges to be able to care about these issues, and they can mobilize just like we did with the fires. They were the ones that took people's animals in from Williams Lake, whatever it was. They helped out. They donated their time with the Red Cross, or the organization that was doing the emergency procedures at the UMBC gym, right? A lot of people donated their time to help out with that. We just need to frame it as a crisis. And I think that'll help a lot. We still need a lot more action from all sides, but I think that that can help.
I think we need structural change, and that's going to require policy and legislation. And so the other thing that people can do if they haven't got time or the inclination to participate in the direct hands-on work, it doesn't take a whole lot to write some emails and send them off to all your elected officials. And I don't mean write to the press, because you'll get a lot further with elected officials if you send them a personal email and you explain to them what your concerns are. And if they get 400 of them, it suddenly becomes very motivating for someone who's thinking about needing votes down the road. So it is a very effective way to affect change. If this matters to you, if this issue is important to you, make sure that your elected officials at every level understand that, and do it in a respectful way, but do it. Send them those emails. All you have to do is go to the city website or the regional district website. There are emails there for the directors, for the mayor, for everybody that you need to reach. Send them all the same bloody email if you want, but it has an impact. And when you're talking about federal politicians and provincial politicians, if you have the time, handwrite something and put it in the actual mail. They will get looked at far more often than an email will. But that will make a difference for those people that want to contribute and make meaningful change. If you're not in a situation in your life where you can donate or get further involved, send a letter. It doesn't take long, and you can copy and paste the same letter to all 30 elected officials that you need to send to. That will make a difference in the longer term.
Good advice. Absolutely. Contacting your elected official is always a good plan.
Structural change is something we need badly. It's a bit more of a longer term goal, but it needs to also be on everyone's list of things that we need to do. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And Tracy hit the nail on the head. We need a systemic change as well too, because, you know, and we've talked about this before, is that, you know, so we get the housing facility up on First Avenue going, and we get the you know, the night inn is housing a bunch of people, and every other places are housing people. That doesn't really change anything other than get a roof over people's heads. It doesn't, because if you take those supports away, they'll be back on the street. So I think what we need is a long-term thing, so a lot of these people, if they're able, can sustain themselves, whether that's through a job or whether it's through a program that helps sustain them. We need to get them away from, you know, one little event from them to be back on the street. And that's sort of like, I think you talk about the systemic changes. We have to look at how these people showed up on the street, why they're there, how they got there, and tackle those problems. You know, addiction is one of the opioid crisis, another one. You know, these are all issues. And like you said, you know, downloading from government, you know, we, you know, cut mental health services for the last 30 years. And that's been a big problem too. So yeah, I agree. We need to really look at the systemic problems that are resulting in people ending up on the street.
100%. We pay taxes for a reason, and they need to be properly spent in a way that reflects the contemporary society that we're all living in.
Mm-hmm. You know, getting close to time here, but we'll wrap up with the other big news of the week out of the north. Adrian Dix and Bonnie Henry kind of were well. Bonnie Henry was her usual self. You couldn't tell whether she was happy or sad. But Adrian Dix was certainly exasperated, but that the numbers in Northern Health of COVID and the you know, in the lack of vaccinations. I think it was the transported 55 people from Northern Health have been transported. 42, I think, or 40 of them, 44 of them.
43 had COVID, 42 were unvaccinated.
Yeah, 40, that's right. So that's just to the people that got shipped out of the area because the hospitals are full. You know, so other than you know, the health minister being exasperated, how do we get the message out to people to get vaccinated? Because that, you know, he and Dr. Henry said specifically that's the problem. People aren't getting vaccinated. We've got low vaccination rates in the northeast area, which has the Alberta effect a little bit, having problems too. So how do we get the message out better?
I'd say it's employers are at least a part of it. take a stand, insist that your employees be double vaccinated, don't work with contractors who are providing you with unvaccinated staff. And all of a sudden you see folks willing to line up and get those shots. At this point, I don't care why they choose to get vaccinated. I just want them to get vaccinated, because if I have a heart attack tomorrow, I don't know that I want a bunch of exhausted surgeons working on me in an emergency situation to save my life, who are all dead tired from 2 years of trying to deal with this. You know, there's impacts that people aren't even thinking about, in terms of they're worrying about canceled surgeries and they're worrying about people being farmed out. But if I had an emergency event right now sitting here at my desk, I'm going over to that hospital, which has 2 outbreaks going on in it and nothing but exhausted staff.
Yeah.
That doesn't bode well for my survival, even though I am double vaccinated. So, you know, I'm just fed up with it. I really am. I understand that there are fears and concerns, and people have gotten turned around 6 ways from Sunday on the internet, but give me a break. We're talking about PhDs in immunology and epidemiology. And what do you want them to do? Go out and Google so they support your crazy idea that you shouldn't get a vaccination? I'm done with it. Get vaccinated.
Yeah, I got to agree with you, Trace. It's got to that point where everybody's just step up, go do it. I mean, it's what we did when we were kids. We all got the measles vaccine, polio vaccines were taken. Everything has been fought through vaccines, and they were all new at one time, right? When they gave you the measles vaccine when it first came out, it wasn't a proven thing. It was the vaccine they came up with to fight measles, and it worked. So this will work too. So I don't see
the science is
problem.
in, the data is in, it does work. It is
Yeah,
working. And
it's
yes, there are
working.
adverse events that happen in a minuscule number of cases, but taking one of those and amplifying it, here we go back to the media again, Bill, amplifying those cases, the 1 in 100,000,
Yeah,
makes everybody out there think, oh my God, that's a risk. I'm going to have something bad happen to me. You know,
yeah, yeah.
we
You
all
may
need
be
to
the
do
1 in
that.
a million case, but you know, I haven't won the lottery a lot yet either. So
Well, and it sucks to be that 1 in a million. I get it. I absolutely get it. And you are taking a risk, but we're talking about mitigated risk, and we're talking about cost benefit analysis here.
yeah, we've actually, have had some experience with this happening through my workplace, with an employer who just said, that's it. You know, we've got people who are immunodeficient here at where I work, and have said everybody needs to be vaccinated by such and such a date. If you don't, sorry, you've got to go.
Mhm.
And we had one person who said, we're not gonna. And they've said, sorry, you got to go. And, I was sad, but at the same time, I thought, yeah, just there's no reason not to. There is no reason not to go and just take this. If you look at the news lately, out at the LNG project, they did the same thing. They said, I think they're giving them to the end of this month for first vaccination, and I think it goes to December for 2 vaccinations. Got to do it, and they're insisting on it for contractors, employees, everybody. Anybody who comes in contact with that plant, with that operation, must get vaccinated. I don't see why we can't just, everybody has to do that. I don't see why all employers don't say, we're not putting up with this anymore. This is crazy. I mean, if you
Of course,
look at,
again, it goes back to political cowardice. The
well,
government
and
could
that's
make
it.
that
That's
statement
exactly
too,
it.
and they could make it a requirement, but they ain't no politician out there at any level going to make that a requirement,
Well,
because
I think
they're
it
worried
needs
about the
to
vocal
be.
20%.
You've got the outlying rural districts and smaller cities up north with the Alberta influence at 54% and 63% vaccination. But those are also the ones where they're shipping everybody out of and sending them to the hospitals down south to be looked after. So can't you see the correlation? It's pretty obvious, I would say, right? Come on, people, you're not that dumb. Really?
We
Use
also
your head.
Mayor of Coupe, I think that's how you say it,
Yeah.
also tweeting, you know, that misinformation about COVID patients in the hospital, along with everything else that she has posted on Facebook. I mean, you know, the premier could require, because provincial government's responsible for municipal, could require that all elected officials in BC get vaccinated. And if they are sharing disinformation, misinformation, that, you know, they lose their seat, you could require that. You could, I know
think that's a great idea.
I mean, we're seeing that out of the north, right? And school districts, it's up to them, I believe. I saw in the news that they can choose for teachers. I mean, we could make a huge impact if we required it at a provincial level. It's a provincial jurisdiction, and then they say, you know, we're going to put in all of these requirements, but we're not going to require it we're not going to set the rule at a provincial level. We're going to let school districts decide. I mean, they're just trying to play both sides, right? I mean, you can't play both sides here. You're not going to make either group happy if you try and play both sides. You have to put your foot down and listen to the science and not try to appeal to a very vocal, very small percentage of people that are angry about it. Because as soon as they mandated it for restaurants, we saw an increase in the north. We saw an increase of people that wanted to go out in the north that decided to go get their vaccine because they couldn't go into the restaurant anymore. It works if you mandate it. You know, they're cranky for a couple of days and then it's second nature. And I think that, you know, it's really upsetting to see them try and take halfway measures just to appeal to get, you know, not upset, not stir the pot with a very small amount of people. They need to put their foot down and mandate it in a lot of, I mean, they said BC Hydro, but not Site C. You could also mandate it, I'm pretty sure, for that, don't quote me on that, but for, you know, you could mandate it for the whole project, not just, yeah.
Do it through WorkSafe. I mean, as an employer, I'm required to provide a safe working environment for my employees.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah,
I don't know why it hasn't been nationally mandated, actually. That's what amazes me.
Different passports than BC. They have a fillable PDF. It's the most easy, you can copy someone else's because it's a fillable PDF. It's not even a QR code or anything in Alberta. So people that are coming over from Alberta don't even have to have a truthful vaccine passport because it's a fillable PDF. It's a joke. So like it needed to be a national thing so that we were all on the same page, and we don't have people coming into our province with other outside province vaccine passports that are falsified.
Yeah. And I'll agree with you, Mackenzie. I think the whole thing about masks or vaccination in the school districts for teachers, it was a cop out on the provincial government's part, because it's the provincial it's Dr. Bonnie Henry is mandating masks and says masks, you know, can be now on kids' lives. So that's a provincial jurisdiction, but somehow vaccinations at the school district level it doesn't wash on me. So yeah, you're right. Be consistent and make it make it across the board. And when it comes to businesses, I'm surprised more businesses haven't required vaccinations for the simple thing. Maybe I have some bad experience or whatever. I know a lot of my employers would do that, not because they give a damn about me, but because if I'm not there, then there's lost productivity, and that's more important to them than my well-being. But, you know, so they do everything to keep me at work, and vaccinations would be one of those. So, but anyways, we're coming up on time. So that was my rant for the end. So we'll go around the horn one more time just for any plugs or final comments. Tracy,
I would just like to say that it's coming up on winter. Think about those people that are out there with less and maybe need a little helping hand, and just think about them and maybe reach out if you can.
I'll offer a piece of advice. I have just recently taken some of my own advice and took 3 full days of zero digital, no phones, no nothing. And I didn't participate in anything. I sat around and read books. One of them was a Trump book, which maybe was a mistake, but I came back after those 3 days feeling good for the first time in weeks and months and possibly 2 years. And, you know, I didn't realize how much all of that was exhausting my mind. And so I would encourage all of you to do, they call it a digital detox, sounds dorky, but shut everything off and really, really commit to that. And I mean, we didn't do TV or anything. And I can't tell you how much of a recharge it was. So there's my advice to you.
There you go. Mackenzie?
Yeah, I that's a really good idea, Tracy. I have a very hard time saying that I'll do that, but I will think about it. maybe one day. When I don't have anything planned on the weekend, then I'll spend a weekend. Oh, we lost Chuck.
Lost Chuck. Yeah.
Yeah, his something must have crashed. But yeah, no, I would echo what he said as well. You know, if you're planning on donating your annual donation to the St. Vincent de Paul at Christmas time, maybe make it a little bit earlier. You know, help them out now, because at Christmas time, it'll already be 40 below. And I think that if we could all kind of shuffle our focus to having a crisis at this time, right now, before the snow falls, I think that we could really take some strong action right now before it gets too disastrous, more than it already is. So yeah, join the Facebook page, Together We Stand, follow along with what's happening and get involved where you can. And I think that last weekend was the last farmers market, but they still have the indoor farmers market. So if you can, you know, have the privileges to buy local and get down there, do that. And maybe take a walk downtown on some of the streets that you avoid sometimes and smile at some people.
Right on. And I'll echo what Tracy. I've been trying to stay away from Facebook a little bit, but I haven't completely shut off, mainly because what I do is on Facebook a lot of times. So it's part of what I do. But trying to spend less time just sitting there, you know, doom scrolling or whatever they call it, and yeah, read more books. I'm reading the Thursday Murder Club, which is about a bunch of geriatrics in a geriatric home getting together to solve an actual murder. So I can relate, I guess, is the thing. So yeah, I want to thank Tracy and Mackenzie and Chuck, who left us early today, for joining us, and everybody else out there who's been watching. And have a good week, and we will see you next week.